There was a time when I appeared to have it all. I was the woman others admired. Poised, polished, seemingly fulfilled. I lived in a beautiful home, married to a well-respected man. To the outside world my life looked perfect. But behind the polished exterior, I was slowly fading. My name is Sophia. I've been married to Martin for more than 20 years. He's 63 now. Brilliant, adored by his students, always intellectually engaged. But emotionally he had long since checked out. Physically he was distant, almost mechanical. For years I convinced myself that this was just what love matured into. That silence was its own kind of intimacy. But over time that silence stopped feeling safe. It became suffocating. His touch, once filled with affection and promise, had become absent, or robotic at best. My body lay next to his, untouched, like a forgotten novel tucked between the dusty volumes in his overflowing bookcase. I tried honestly, I did. New lingerie, subtle hints, direct talks. I opened the door hoping he'd walk through, but there was always a paper to grade, a book he couldn't put down, a theory he had to explore. I began to retreat, piece by piece, until I was barely present in my own life. Barely speaking, barely feeling, just existing. And then came Russell. He moved in next door with his aunt. He was 21, tall, lean, full of unfiltered youth and energy. At first, he was just a polite neighbor, always offering a friendly wave when I tended to the garden. Sometimes he'd offer to carry heavy bags or help with the fence. There was something disarming about his easy smile, his laugh, something I couldn't admit I looked forward to seeing. I began noticing things I had no business noticing. How his t-shirt clung to his chest after mowing the lawn, how sweat traced along his temple, the effortlessness of his charm. One afternoon, I saw him struggling with a heavy box. I rushed over, insisting he let me assist, but instead invited him in for a cold glass of lemonade. At first we made small talk about the neighborhood, the weather, mundane things. But as the days passed, our conversations became more layered. He opened up about his financial situation, juggling odd jobs while saving for college. I listened, genuinely invested, maybe too eager to help. I started picking up groceries for him. Just simple things he'd mentioned needing. He resisted at first, proud, but eventually he let me in. In return, he gave me something I hadn't felt in years, attention. Real attention. He noticed the color of my dress, told me my hair looked beautiful, said I radiated like sunlight, words Martin hadn't uttered in over a decade. Felt reckless. Felt necessary. One evening I stood before my mirror, lipstick in hand, something I hadn't worn in years. My heart raced as I spritzed perfume along my neck. I hated how much I cared, hated how alive I suddenly felt. This wasn't me, or at least not the woman I had become. That night, Russell stopped by to return a book. When our hands brushed, just briefly, the contact sizzled. He didn't look at me like a boy looks at a neighbor. He looked at me like a man looks at a woman he desires. I didn't step back. Later, lying in bed beside Martin's sleeping form, I stared at the ceiling, aching. Not for sex, but for closeness, for warmth, for feeling. I thought of how Russell had looked at me, the way it sparked something I had buried so long ago. For the first time in years, I didn't cry myself to sleep. I closed my eyes and imagined what it would be like to be touched by someone who wanted me. Not out of habit, not out of obligation, but out of sheer longing. I told myself I wouldn't cross that line, that I was just being kind to a struggling young man. But deep inside I knew better. I could feel the tension rising, a quiet storm that would not be ignored. I wasn't naive. I recognized desire. I had just forgotten how it felt. Russell reminded me. And once that part of me stirred awake, it refused to go dormant again. The first time it happened, it wasn't planned. He had come over to help fix a leak under the kitchen sink. Martin was at the university, as always, buried in thoughts and theories that felt more real to him than I did. Russell was kneeling on the floor, sleeves pushed up, hands busy with the wrench, while I stood nearby, heart pounding, trying to act unaffected. When he finished, he looked up, and our eyes locked. Something silent but unmistakable passed between us. I asked if he wanted some coffee. He nodded. We sat together, not speaking much. Eventually, I asked if he needed help with tuition for the next semester. He hesitated, then gave a small nod. That night, I wired him the money. He never asked for anything else, but I kept offering. New sneakers, a better phone, sometimes just cash tucked discreetly into his jacket. None of it felt like a transaction. Felt natural. And in return, he gave me something priceless. Presence. He looked at me like I existed, like I mattered. And then one evening I kissed him. He didn't pull away. There was no awkward pause, no guilt. Only arms pulling me in, lips meeting mine with a need that matched my own. My whole body trembled, not with fear, but with a dizzying rush of being wanted. We didn't speak much afterward. He left quietly, but I could still feel him on my lips, on my skin between my thighs. Became routine. Martin's schedule was easy to predict. Russell would come over late after dark. We didn't need words, we needed heat, and he gave it freely. He touched me like he needed me, hungrily, reverently. Let him. I embraced it. There was no shame, only fire. I found myself smiling again, laughing at the mirror, dressing in ways that reminded me I was still a woman, still desirable. I didn't just crave Russell's body. I craved the way he saw me, like I wasn't fading, like I still had color. He stopped calling me Miss Sophia. He started calling me baby. I didn't correct him. I wasn't a woman who waited by the window anymore. I was a woman, a younger man sought out under the cover of night. And we talked about dreams, about pain, about who we had been before life dulled our edges. He once opened up about the night he ran away from home. In return, I told him about the first time Martin made me feel insignificant. How a single glance, a careless word, can shrink a woman into nothing. We were two souls from entirely different worlds, meeting in the same quiet storm, where need drowned out reason. He needed help. I needed to be touched. He was searching for support. I was starving for attention. And in that space between us, we both found what we lacked. There were times I'd watch him as he slept. His breath steady, his face soft in the dark. I'd wonder, did I exist beyond those tangled sheets in his mind? But I never asked. I didn't want to risk unraveling the illusion. I covered for him when neighbors raised eyebrows about how often he came by. I said he was helping out around the house. Martin never noticed. He was too consumed by his ever-expanding research, too wrapped up in academia to sense what was slipping through the cracks. I began to resent him, not just for neglecting me, but for making it so effortless to betray him. I didn't feel guilty, not yet. I was drunk on being desired, on being needed, on feeling worshipped again. Russell began leaning on me more. Tuition payments, bills, new clothes. I took care of everything. And in return, he gave me nights of fire and mornings that felt tender. Sometimes we'd lie on the couch together. His head resting on my chest, my fingers tangled in his hair. In those moments, I forgot I was someone's wife. I forgot I was 45. I felt seen, young, alive. But danger always lurks behind pleasure. One evening, Martin came home early. Unexpected, unannounced. Russell was still upstairs, barely dressed. My heart nearly stopped. I rushed him into the closet, smoothed my dress, and greeted Martin with a shaky smile. I served dinner with trembling hands, every second ticking like a bomb. But he didn't notice. Didn't even look up from his scribbled notes. That night I laughed until I cried. Laughed at how blind he was, how oblivious. Russell slipped out the back door past midnight, silent. We never spoke about it. We didn't need to. We existed in a fragile world of stolen moments, breathless desire, and unspoken understanding. Each time we touched, it burned hotter. Each meeting felt more desperate. I wasn't in love, not yet. But I was undeniably addicted to the way he awakened something dormant inside me. I knew it couldn't last, but I didn't care. Not then. I would have risked everything for the way he made me feel when his skin met mine. Then the dreams began to tighten in my chest. I started waking up with an ache no blanket could soothe, no silence could ease. Something had shifted. Not with Martin. He remained the same, buried in his books, his back always turned. No, it was Russell who changed. He started to pull away little by little. The text slowed. The visits shortened. He began dressing differently. More stylish, wearing cologne I hadn't given him. And then I saw her. A girl, young, beautiful, laughing with him at his front gate. He didn't introduce us. Just cast a guilty glance my way and muttered, "She's just a friend." I nodded, pretending I believed him, but the pain spread through my chest like slow poison. That night he came over as usual. I didn't ask questions. I let him take me. Let his hands roll my skin like before. But something felt off. His warmth was colder. His lips avoided mine. And in his touch, I could feel her shadow. I knew then I was the only one. Maybe he loved her. Maybe she made sense, she was closer to his age. She had time. I had memories and fading skin. No amount of affection could erase that truth. Still, I held him like I never wanted to let go, terrified that it might be the last time. The next morning I asked him, "Is she your girlfriend?" He paused, looked down, then said, "I didn't think you'd care. You knew what this was." That sentence hit harder than I expected. I had told myself the same thing so many times. This wasn't about love. It was about comfort, survival, heat. But hearing it from him made it concrete. I wasn't special. I was available. And maybe I had confused attention for something deeper. Martin started noticing the shifts. The way I avoided his eyes at dinner, the long showers, the restless nights. He asked me if I was okay. I lied and said yes. He didn't press. Maybe he didn't want to know, or maybe he already did. There's a kind of silence that grows in old marriages. A quiet pact, not to confront, not to shatter the fragile balance, to look the other way because it's easier than truth. I didn't cut things off with Russell right away, but eventually I stopped texting first. Stopped offering money. And he didn't chase me. He drifted toward her. I saw them once in the grocery store. They were laughing. He looked happy. He saw me too, gave a small nod, a half smile, and walked past like I was no one. That night, the house felt heavier. The bed colder. I stopped wearing makeup, packed away the dresses I bought during those months, tucked them deep in the closet like a secret I no longer had the strength to remember. I cried once, just once, and never again. I didn't regret what happened. Not a second of it. But I did regret hoping it could ever be more than what it was meant to be. Martin never found out, or maybe he did and chose silence. We carried on like nothing had changed. Breakfast at 8, quiet evenings, the same predictable dance. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. Something inside me had shifted, cracked open, then rebuilt. I no longer begged to be noticed. I no longer waited to be loved. I had tasted something wild, something real. It didn't last, but it woke me up. Sometimes late at night, I sit by the window with a warm cup of tea and look at the house.